can see, it's all together. Well, kind of all together. It's also primed. The bed being the most complicated part already looks like a junkyard. So as I said in the unboxing video, this bed looks by far the most complicated part to make, and I was going to skip ahead in the instructions and build it first, which I did. And it is the most complicated part. It probably took me twice as long as building the chassis did. It's quite good fun to build. There are I ran into a few issues. They're not problems as such, but definitely issues right from the beginning. In fact, step one, you stick the 3 sides to the plank, as it's called, and everything sticks into channels. This is all nicely machined and channeled. All these are slightly sunk in, so you get a good bond. But the channel for the sides, the first thing you put on is ever so slightly longer than the side, so you don't know whether to line it up with here, with the very end of the plank, or line it up with the end of the slot that it's sitting in. And typically, you know, I had it wrong. So luckily I realized I could pull the whole thing apart still before it had fully set. Did it again. So if you're building one of these, or probably any other cross thing with this kind of bed, you're going to be lining up the end of the bed there with the end of the plank. It might sound really obvious, but it kind of is when you're looking at it as a whole thing here, but you don't know when you're starting out, like what other components go in, what might fill things out, and how the tailgate might sit. There's the tailgate. The other issue I had was that the holes for these things here, these bars are 1.6 millimeters wide, and the holes are only 1 millimeter, 1.2 maybe, and that is not enough to get them in. This stuff doesn't expand. I had to drill them out very carefully. I only had a 1.5 millimeter drill at first, and that wasn't enough. It really needs to be 1.6, and you can see just how thin that is there, just how close that is to the surface. So I did that with a hand drill, which I have right here. That's not the 1.6, it's much smaller. And then that worked out okay, but you will need to do that. It takes a while. All these parts have to go on, all these sides. Yeah, the main issue I had with getting the whole thing together is that it's very hard to get clamps into a lot of these places because the bed sides are so tall. I've just got like loads of these little clamps, and there's a lot of places that they just can't reach if you need them to, and you really do need that pressure. The glue, not really a glue, it's a solvent that melts the top of the surface, and you really need to crush the 2 surfaces together to get a good strong bond, and that was hard. So a lot of these I had to just sit and hold and try not to push, and then once I'd finished it, there was a lot of creaky bits. I went round it all again. Luckily this weld it's very thin, and it will capillary quite nicely underneath through tiny gaps. So I just, like here for instance, I just sort of pulled it out slightly, ran some more round, and it seems to go under, and then clamped that again. At least you can get to these. This stuff is, obviously you can tell from the different colour, this is a very light coat of primer. It's different plastic. It does stick well, but it definitely takes longer to bond than whatever this is to itself, to the same stuff. These took a long time as well. They look the same as on my MC6, but they're made of different plastic, and these are basically part of the structure. This one is glued down completely there to cover the motor. Now the motor sits up under there, I assumed wrong during the unboxing. I thought they'd make it quite realistic and put the motor under here because you've got all that space, but that's an electronics box under there, being that, like an engine cover. I've just gone matte black with that just because the sides of that will be visible through the wheel wells. That's essentially wheel well there, and the rest of it won't be visible. So this all takes a bit of getting together. Again, you can't really clamp it. It's also really hard because you can't really build this and then put it in afterwards. So getting paint down in these gaps, that's not easy. Once it was all together, I was pretty happy with it, except the three sides are not joined at all, which worried me. Like if I tip it over or roll it over, you know, there's going to be so much pressure going onto these sides. They're probably going to snap, and I think they will snap. In here, there are thin little necks in there where they actually pass through that bar, and I think that will be where it snaps, which is a bit of a worry. So I got this stuff, just 90 degree, 4mm either side, made some little fillets and stuck them together there. Again, it was hard to clamp. You know, I think they're fairly low key, they don't show, just to bond them together and try and get some strength by, that's not really triangulating, is it? But you know, just making a 90 degree there, that'll give that some support. I may add some support to this bar here. I have actually got some brass square tube, which I think I could use here as bracing, probably just screw through, bolt right through. You know, and hopefully make it look like it should be there. That would just sort of clamp. It would just form a clamp there and give it a bit of strength there, so it's got a bit of strength there and a bit of strength there. That might help. It's still vulnerable. I still don't want to tip it over, but I think that's all I did as far as modifications go. I do like the wheel wells. Look, textured, different texture underneath. Two on top. Nice detail. So the cab, that lovely cab. Not much to do to that. You stick this bit on the handles. In the instructions, there's holes to sort of receive the little dimples under these handles. There were no holes, not in my one anyway, on that or for that handle. So I shaved them down and stuck them on flat, basically. There are holes for the door handles. It's going to make, probably shouldn't have put them on first because it would make painting this a different color. This panel, this inset panel, pretty hard. But hey, and there's not a lot else to do to that. What I do like is that the roof is designed to pop off, on and off. Hopefully not of its own accord. Doesn't necessarily glue on, so that's pretty handy. So you can get in there because there's some lights going on under there, 3 beacons, and obviously anything you want to do with the interior, which is here, which is again a simple thing. I haven't stuck the dash part on because it's warped and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to deal with that yet, but that's just primer. That's ready to get various colors on it. Those sticking out bits are actually the front of the arches, the wheel arches underneath. So fuel tanks on all the ones I could find were black, but it makes them really disappear with the chassis. I didn't like it so much, so I thought I will do them metallic. They will get weathered and a bit battered looking. That's just a coat. What I did do, because I've recently lost one of these filler necks on the HC, they're stuck together now so I can't show you, but I drilled a hole through there, and then I put an M3 bolt of the right length right up inside, straight through into that, and then I filled the whole thing with super glue. because it's pretty wide in there, you can't thread into it. And then I bonded that down as normal as well. So basically it's got a steel core, as it were, to hopefully give it a bit of extra strength. And it shouldn't just completely disappear if it does snap. It should just dangle there. Because I lost the one on the HC6, and it's 12 quid for a set of these tanks. I don't want to spend 12 quid just getting another filler neck. So I did that to both. Oh, and before I go on, the bumper looks lovely. I was a little disappointed it was plastic and not metal, but I think it's going to be just fine. It certainly looks good. There's some metal, what do you call it, sort of diamond plate that sticks on there that looks very nice. And this is the sort of speaker box thing that's a toolbox, I suppose. I haven't stuck that on yet just because it would be so awkward to paint in this tiny gap, so I'm going to spray this separately, stick it on at the end. And then lastly is the chassis, which, ignore the pipe cleaners, they're just for hanging it up when I was coating the whole thing in primer. This went together very easily. I've added some O-rings above and below these leaves to try and help it twist and flex. That works really well on the TF2, so I thought I'd try it here. I did build it up with the drive shafts and the gearbox. I've taken that back out just for painting, just save having to mask it all, just mask these bearings off. What I have changed, and what I spent ages doing, as stock, what you're supposed to do is put this bar on that side, and that puts it extremely low. It's about level with the bottom of this axle, so it's really vulnerable. It's going to be the first thing that hits rocks, and I don't want that. So I spent ages trying to get it on top here and run this steering link through the gap up above the leaf and still get clearance. And I tried all sorts of things and I couldn't do it. In the end, what I've done is use these much thinner rod ends that I had. I'm a little bit worried. Obviously, they're not nearly as long as the stock ones, or as chunky. So I'm a little bit worried they may just rip out if it takes a hit that pulls the tyre when it's going any speed. It's possible they'll fail. I don't know. Or the steering one. I'll just have to see. If it does, I'll have to go back and rethink it. Go back to standard. Not really sure, but I'm going to try this just for a little bit more clearance. It would be really nice if you could get it on the back of the axle, but then you're really messing with these limits, these travel limiters, because you'd have to swap the hubs back to front, and then the limiters not in the right place because the shocks mount here. Taking those off as well for spraying. So I'll just paint the bodies of those separately. Now I've got oil on my hands and I'm going to touch the paint again. That's good, isn't it? Next is, that's going matte black, all of that. I've slightly forgotten about the wheels and tyres. I have sort of prepped that slightly, but these need to all be scrubbed and painted, whatever the colour I choose to do the wheels. I'm not sure. Yeah, I have gone backwards and forwards on what colour, excuse my fingers there, on what colour to do the whole damn thing. I really have. I've had, orange, black, white, all sorts, civilian things. Some people really want me to do it civilian and not military. I keep thinking I've decided, and then I undecide. I think I have decided now. I have ordered some different paint. I'm not going to do what I had plans. Somebody's going to be disappointed, but hopefully it won't be me, and it's mine. So, hey, that's how it's supposed to be, right? It looks a bit of a mess, but it's actually, I'm quite a long way through the process. Would I recommend it? Yeah. Is it fun to build? Yes, it is. That bed is quite a challenge. You might want, if you can find some clamps with extremely long sort of fingers, that'd be very useful for you. But yeah, great kit. I like it. I'll see you next time.